All right, so and just a quick overview of what we're going to be doing today. So we're going to go over how to prepare your film for submission to SofaTube. We're going to go over some tier one and tier two requirements for each film and how to submit each one to us. And then we're just going to look through the calendar and have some important dates for you guys just to know when you should be submitting your film, when screenings are, etc. So if you have any questions that we may not have covered within the presentation, or you want to be able to access the screening at another point in time, you could go to the FVASA website, particularly under documentation and screenings, and it should give you all of the information that you need that may not have been said today or may not have been answered within a question today. So the screenings process. I'm sure most of you have already gone through pre-production and post-production for your films. So today we're going to be focusing on post-production, which is just making sure that the video and audio is formatted correctly for the Wegmans Theater. And then we're going to go over QCing, how to do that, and submissions, which is just watching your film over again, making the changes that you need to be able to fit our standards and submit. So one thing you want to do is utilize the handouts. These should be found on the FVASA website. There's a screenings checklist, which basically is preparing for the SOFA screenings and has like a little like checklist of everything that you may need to do before you can submit it. And then submission and QC policies, it should give a rough idea or schedule on how things are going to go. And we'll just go over a few things like QC policies and stuff like that. So just some things that are required for both tier one and tier two films. You must include closed captions burned into your film. You must include the sofa bumper at the beginning of the film, and you must adhere to the audio loudness specifications. If you don't have the first two in your films, then we can't screen your film until after you have those changes. But if you don't adhere to the audio loudness specifications, there are things that we at FVASA can do to help you. But your film will have a little disclaimer at the beginning saying that it was modified for the audio standards at Wegmans. So we just prefer if you have all of those things when you submit. All right, so for tier one films specifically, there's a few things that you have to do to prepare for your screening. So first off would be exporting your film in the correct format. We're going to go over how exactly to do that in a few minutes. QCing on your own computer, so just watching over your film again, making sure that you have those requirements mentioned earlier and making sure that it looks the way you want it to. And then submitting your film through the screenings portal. There will be an auto QC that we at FVASA have before you submit it, and they'll just like do like a quick basic check of whether you have your requirements in there. And then once you submit your film, you'll sign up for a screenings time, which is April 25th from 7 to 10 p.m. in Gannett's A level. So once you submit your film, you'll get a ticket for that, and then you'll just bring that to us and we'll schedule you. All right, so here are some requirements for each of your films for tier one. The resolution has to be 1920 by 1080, aspect ratio 16 by 9, frame rate, it can be 23.98, 24, 29.97, or 30, but it has to be progressive. Sound must be stereo, bitrate limited with no LFEs. Compression must be H.264 in an MP4 container. And yeah, a lot of these should already be built in, but you should definitely check your presets within whatever software you're using to make sure that you have those. So exporting. Always, always, always watch your film before you export. It definitely helps check over some stuff that you may have missed while editing. And then in terms of Adobe export presets, if you're exporting your film on the Sofa or Magic lab computers, it should have the correct export settings automatically built in. on Premiere, After Effects, and Media Encoder, but you just want to make sure you double check those settings. If you're submitting through a personal computer, you're going to have to download those presets and just build them in before you export. There are instructions on the FVASA website on how to download these and use them if they're not already installed. But you can definitely like download those and have them set to export for us. All right, so for audio loudness, just some specifications that you want to have for your films. You want to have around a -3 max peak and a -27 integrated loudness target. So there is, again, documentation for this on the FVASA website that'll help you master that. If you're using Pro Tools for your audio, you can use the Isotope Insight plugin, which is recommended for analyzing the loudness and the peak, as well as the Isotope Loudness Control, which is used to confirm your final mix. And if you're editing on Premiere Pro, you can use the Loudness Radar to achieve a similar effect. So for Tier 1 submission, you're going to submit through the screenings portal in the little link listed there. Once you do that, you'll receive a ticket for signing up for a screenings time. But before you submit, you just want to make sure that you title your film, last name, film name, month, date, year, just to make things easier for organization on our side. And then if you need to add in the SOFA bumper at the beginning, you can download that from the SOFA2 website. And there is a new SOFA policy that we're going to go a little bit more in depth later, but it's basically an extra little credit that you're going to have at the end of your film. And we'll go deeper into that a little bit later once we cover Tier 2. For quality control, you can QC on your computer just by checking your content, your image and sound, checking the encoding settings, and just making sure that your submission follows the aforementioned requirements. And that just helps us like make things a bit smoother and be able to screen your film faster. So for submission, FVASA checks submission requirements like audio loudness, resolution, and codecs. So it'll just check for basic things like that. If it passes those, you're all set and you can submit your film and get a receipt, sorry. But if your QC fails, you will be notified about that and you'll have to fix it before it'll allow you to submit it. All right, so for Tier 2 films, things are a little bit different. So instead of just exporting it as is, you want to make sure you create the digital source master or DSM files. You'll create one for your visual or picture DSM and then one for your audio DSM. Once those are done, you're going to create a DCP by combining the two as well as a trim video. And then you'll have a specific QC time in Wegmans Theater. Once you submit your films for a QC, you'll sign up for a specific time and we'll just go over your film and make sure everything is set for us. And then finally, you'll sign up for a specific screening time. All right, so requirements. Things are a little bit different depending on whether you have a flat film or a scope film and whether things are 2K and 4K. So if you're doing a 2K flat, it's 1998 by 1080. If you're doing a 2K scope, it's 2048 by 858. 4K flat is 3996 by 2160, and 4K scope is 4096 by 1716. Aspect ratio is the same thing with it being different for flat or scope, with 1.85 for flat or 2.39 for scope. Frame rate is just 24 frames per second. It's not 29.98 or any of the like close ones to 24. It has to be 24 frames per second. Sound is stereo. It's 7.1 uncompressed, 2448. And then the format is going to be a digital cinema package as well as a video trim. And all of the rest of the stuff should be built in already. So for creating the DCP, you're going to create a digital source master DSM, which is used to create the DCP. Like I said, it's one DSM for pictures and one DSM for sound. And then once you have those, you're going to smash them together into a digital cinema package using DCP-O-Matic. It is not a single file, but it's a collection of files. It's kind of like a folder for all of your stuff. So for the DSM export, you want to make sure that you watch your film in advance. Same with Tier 1. You want to export your picture and your audio separately. just to make things not mesh together within the final recording, and then make sure they're synchronized as well, just to make it like sound good and look good. And there are multiple DSM options that you can have for your picture. So if you use a TIFF file, it'll be a very, very large file, but it's going to be very high quality and uncompressed. And then a DNxHR is just a single file that's compressed and smaller, but we do recommend you have that if you have a live action film or a longer film, like longer than, say, longer than 5 minutes, maybe, or
The live action film.
well, just for the like longer films, like around if it's longer than 10 minutes, then it should definitely be a DNxHR. And then same with tier 1 Adobe export presets. They're on the Sofa and Magic computers already, so those are already built in. But if they're not installed and you're just using a personal computer, there are instructions to how to download them and use them on the FVASA website. And then there are those for all of the tier 2 formats and options.
Yeah. Continue. Sorry about that. I was just going to say the TIFF sequence is usually for animation, the DMX chart is usually for live action.
Okay. So just to confirm, DNxHR is usually for live actions, and TIFF can be used for animation. So for DCP-O-Matic, you want to make sure you have your DSMs ready. And then once you have that, you're going to combine and package them within DCP-O-Matic. There's a specific way of doing it on the FVASA website. And if you just follow the steps on there, you should be set for that. And there are a few templates for tier 2 formats that you can follow to help you package it. So once you're done with that, the DCP is sent to FVASA automatically if you're exporting from a computer, but you'll have to just send it manually if you're using a personal computer. And then you want to make sure you keep a copy of it for yourself just in case something goes wrong with the file and it gets corrupted and we have to use your version. So for a trim file, DCP does not work on SofaTube, so you're going to just create a video MP4 version. So you're going to use the DSMs to create that. You'll combine it in a timeline specifically in Premiere Pro, and then you'll just use the tier 1 Adobe presets for exporting it. So first, submitting your files, the DCP, again, if you're on a Magic or Sofa computer, it'll submit automatically through DCP-O-Matic. And then you'll sign up for a QC through the sign-up sheet on the screenings tab for FVASA. And you want to make sure that you bring your submission receipt when you come to the QC so that we know you're going to be there and we can prepare for you. So for tier 2 submission, if the QC passes, like the auto QC, you're all set. You've already submitted your DCP, but you just want to make sure you submit the trim file through SofaTube, so that's what the QC will check for. And then you'll sign up for a screening time. And then if the QC fails, you just have to fix it and resubmit it, but there's a few requirements that we have for the tier 2 QCs that you may have to follow if you submit at a later date, for example. And then, as always, don't forget the SofaTube bumper. You can download it from the SofaTube website. All right, so a few additional notes. So this is new for this year. The screening scripts policy says that since the project is produced with Sofa gear and facilities, etc., the student is required to include the Sofa production credit brand logo or the animation credit brand logo in the end scroll of the credits. So it'll just be an extra little identifier that you'll add on at the end of your credits. And then it just has to be able to be visible. It should be at least 20% the width of the credit roll. So just make sure that's in full frame when you submit your films. Captioning. Captions are required for all of your films. There are a few tutorials on the FVASA website for how to caption your films, and it can also be found on our YouTube channel. So right now, you're going to need open captions, so just burnt in, typed automatically captions. But soon, hopefully, we'll be able to develop a workflow for closed captions. But for right now, you just need to get them in yourself. All right, the amnesty deadline for this semester is April 23rd at 10 p.m. So this applies for mainly Tier 2. Any student who submits before the amnesty deadline will be afforded a guaranteed QC assessment and will be supported by FVASA. And if you're a graduating senior, you don't need to get rid of your screenings time to do that. So if you submit after the amnesty deadline, but before the general submission deadline, if it has any flaws within it, the filmmaker can still correct those flaws, but you won't be able to keep your original screenings time and you'll just have to sign up for a new one. So if you submit after the amnesty deadline and the general submission deadline, if it has any technical flaws, we may not be able to fix it, or it may not be able to be screened at all, depending on the severity of it. So, yeah, just be cognizant of that and make sure that you submit hopefully before the amnesty deadline. All right, so artist statements. BFA students must write a 2-page artist statement to share at the final presentation of their capstone. This can be either in person or pre-recorded. If you're doing a pre-recorded artist statement, it's the same deadline as the general screening deadline, so you just want to make sure you submit that along with your film. And then BFA students must allow around 5 minutes for their artist statements, so when you're signing up for a screening time, you just want to make sure that you have those requirements in and you just are cognizant of that for your screenings time. All right, craft presentations. This is mainly for the capstone students. So capstone students may schedule a screenings time prior to uploading media for their presentations, since their choices for time slots are connected to the capstone films. Capstone directors are given a priority to select times up until noon on the deadline day. And then from noon to 7 p.m. on deadline day, the capstone students can select their preferred presentation time, but they are not given that priority. Craft students are responsible for uploading media to the FVASA screening server. It has to be no less than 24 hours before the assigned screenings time. All right, so the screenings, QC, and submission schedule. The calendar is a little bit out of date, but the submissions open on April 14th, so you could start submitting your films to the SofaTube website on that date. Amnesty ends on April 23rd at 10 p.m. After that, there is no guaranteed tech assistance for Tier 2 films. So sign-ups start for screenings time at April 28th at 7 to 10 p.m. in Gannett Lobby. And then the submission deadline, same time as the screening sign-up, is April 28th at 10 p.m. And then screenings will start May 1st at 10 p.m. and these should go for probably 5 days. So it'll be from May 1st to around May 5th, I think. Yeah, May 5th.
Hopefully just 5.
It'll hopefully be just 5, yeah. So if you have any things that may not have been covered within this presentation, you can find the info within the documentation or screenings tabs under the FVASA website. And if you have any extra questions, you can email us at the FVASA@rit.edu, and we should be able to get back to you relatively quickly. All right, so are there any questions about anything that we covered within the presentation? All right, if there are no more questions from anyone? Nope, okay. Well, thank you so much for joining us. This was the last presentation, so this will be uploaded to our website pretty soon. And again, if you have any questions after this, you can email us or you can look to the FVASA website under the documentation screenings tab, and we should have the recordings posted there as well. So thank you guys for coming, and we hope to see you soon on screenings time.